sparkling day. Welcome to Porchlight Letters podcast number 2369. What records can help replace missing oral stories? So records are really awesome because they speak when voices are gone. So when people have passed, those stories are lost, we can still help build the story by the records that we research. And some of the records we can research are like things like census records reveal a structure. You will have in there the name of the people that lived in that house, in that household. You will have who the head of the house is. You will have who their spouse is. And then you will have who the head of the house's children are. Now, because there's a husband and wife mentioned, it does not order, and if the husband is the head of the house, it does not necessarily mean that the children listed are children of the wife, because they're only listing the relationship to the head of the house. It is assumed or presumed in a lot of cases that yes, that is the husband and the wife and their children, but you need to back that up with other documents like birth certificates, baptismal records that can place those children with that couple, especially with the mother. Father, you've got it taken care of. But also listed on there will be their occupation, what their occupation is, their age. It may be listed how long they've been married, maybe another question on there. I know on the 1910, it asked the woman how many children she had given birth to and how many were still alive. I think that's what it was, or how many pregnancies. Number of children she had had and how many were still alive, which is really good because if there's 5 children mentioned and she had 7, there's 2 missing ones that are no longer alive. So that gives you another thing that you can go and look for. So it reveals the structure. If they are on a farm, it will show the acreage of the farm and it may show how many employees they have. It will also show you, a lot of them will show you where their parents were born. So where their parents were born. So they'll have a father and a mother one, and it could be, if it's their first time having a census taken, whether they're in England or now England are done on United Kingdom are done on the years ending in 1, and the US federal census is done on the years ending in 0. And there are a few states that have in between. A few states in the US that have in between census on the years ending in 5. Some of the census may show you where their parents were born. So if you've got the head of the house, where was his father's birthplace? Where was his mother's birthplace? It would also show, can they read? Can they write? What else can it show them? Some of them will show you what was the highest grade you got to in school, the highest level in school that you went to. There are so many questions, and questions are often changing over the different census reports. So if you can usually find the enumerator's report. But if you're on something like ancestries.com, you can go to where their forms are, and it will give you a form for the different years in the different countries. So I know for England, it's got like 1841 form through to, when was the last one released? I think was 1921, I think was the last one released. And it will have a different form for every year. And you can have a look at the columns at the top of those forms to see what questions they asked that year. So that gives you an insight into who they are. And the same with the US Census reports. They'll start at 1840 through to 1850 was the last one released. And there'll be a different form for every year, except 1890. There was a big fire that destroyed most of the census reports from 1890. And so there are some census reports that have survived, but very few. And if you go to if you Google 1890 census reports, it will show you what areas they still have census reports for. So if you had relatives that lived in those areas, you're okay. If you didn't, I'm sorry. Newspapers can provide context. I love looking at the newspapers. Things I like about newspapers is that you can go in there, you can not only see the article that may have your ancestor's name in there, but also look at the front page. What was going on at that time? Because a lot of the times they'll end up in the society pages with birth, deaths, marriages, injured, in hospital, on vacation, the society gossip pages, marriage announcements, engagement announcements, that sort of thing. And sometimes they'll be in the sporting pages if they play a particular sport, what their scores were and that sort of thing. But here's one is that go to the front page. What was on the front page of that newspaper, and see what was happening in that area at that time, because that will give you provide you with context of what your family may have been going through during that period of time. Was there a big national disaster? Was there a disaster in their local area? Was there some celebration going on? You may find, if you happen to find journals or journals from your ancestors, maybe you could look in those to see if they had any thoughts or wrote anything about that time, about that event. Church records will track relationships. You will have baptism records, you'll have marriage records, you'll have death records in there, and they will record, and they often recorded when was the actual birth date, if it was a baptismal record, who the parents were, the mother's maiden name. A lot of these were before records were required to be kept at a national level, or even a county level, or a state level. And even beyond that, they will also record stuff in there like that too. Marriages, who were the parent, typically who was the father and what was his occupation? The father of the groom, the father of the bride, what were their occupations? Were they still alive? They'd been deceased. Who were the witnesses to the wedding? Were they relatives? Were they friends? Who was the officiant for the wedding? All these sorts of things. Military and land records will show movement. Military records will show where the different areas they served. Land records will show how long that plot of land was held in the family before it was sold, and where did they move to. Witnesses can reveal community. So when we're talking about witnesses, we're talking about witnesses like, again, giving an interview in a newspaper. People who lived close to your ancestors who are still alive today. Maybe there's questions you could ask them about their next door neighbors, type of thing. Did they belong to any associations? A lot of associations have records as well. So did they belong to associations? And this will help pad things out for you. Were they members of people like Daughters of the American Revolution or Sons of the American Revolution? Because if they were members, that means you could be too. You just have to prove your lineage. But if you're descendant of that person, their lineage is already tracked. And I will tell you this, those societies that require you to prove your family, you have to provide your family tree for, are a gold mine for information, gold mine. And why this matters is records preserve what the memory cannot. It's as simple as that. They preserve. And yes, there are times that war will remove original records and things, and you have to find other records to help fill those in. But these are the main ones, the census records, the newspapers, church records, military and land records, witnesses. They are the ones that will help you build that story around things. And those records will help provide part of the story for you as well. Excuse me. So your practical takeaway for today is combine multiple records to rebuild a narrative. And in closing, records are stories in fragments. And with that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening, yes, at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hey, Conrad.